Welcome back everybody. Warner Brothers and Party City have teamed up and sent me this Clark Kent Justice League costume. Both are proud sponsors of this video. The overshirt is actually sewn to the undershirt, so it's really nice and lightweight. Buttons are actually Velcro, so you can embrace your inner Clark Kent and rip your shirt open to reveal your Superman. Also in this costume packet comes a black satin tie, and obviously it has the Clark Kent spectacles. You can customise the look just the way you want, like I have here. I've got this Superman Clark Kent wig. This is perfect for this comic book look that we're going for. You can get everything you need at Party City. And now I'm going to show you how to customise it to really make it your own. Today I'm going to show you how to do this amazing Superman comic makeup to match your Halloween costume. And you can join the league for exclusive content if you click jointheleague.com, which I will link in the description bar for you. I'm starting off by using NYX's Total Control Drop Foundation as my base. The image I'm using is some fan art of Superman, so by following the patterns and the colour from the reference image, Jack ends up resembling a comic book character. When I look at that reference image, I see 4 main skin tone colours. So I've picked out these 4 shades, including a white for highlight, and I'm also going to be using a black paint to do the comic effect. So the reason I've chose to use a very light base to begin with is because this is going to be my brightest highlight shade. Then I like to go in with the skin tone, then the contour shade, and then we'll move on to black. So this is the lightest of the 4 skin tone shades that I'm going to be using. On my reference image, the skin tone is made up of highlight and contour sections. So there's no easy way for me to explain the patterns that I'm creating. When you're copying someone's face, you don't want to just try and paint their face onto yours. Instead, you want to look at the patterns and just mimic the shapes and the colour. And if you copy precisely, then the look should come together. I'll add a link to the reference image in the description bar for you. The product I'm using is a cream foundation by Kryolan, and this is called Supracolor. You'll notice that I use this a lot in my Halloween and theatrical looks. It's a really opaque product and it's so blendable, so it works really well when you're mixing colours together. It's quite a thick product, so you can get very good coverage with it, but you can also shear it down if it's necessary. Not only does Supracolor come in a great range of skin tones, it also comes in many other colours. You'll notice I've used them for tutorials such as my Gamora, Handsome Jack, the Mad Hatter, my Grim Reaper, loads. As I mentioned, because they're cream, they really do blend into each other so easy before you set them. But then if you want individual colours like we're using today, where they're obviously separate, they're opaque enough to stand out next to one another. My tip when working with Supracolor, because it is a thick foundation, is to either warm it up on the back of your hand first, or you can use something called MakeUp blend, which is also by Kryolan, and it shears the product down, so you don't compromise the pigment, but you do get a slightly thinner coverage with it. So as you can see, the skin tone's really starting to come together now. We're getting a nice pattern all the way down the face. I prefer to do a whole white base first and then start working in with the skin tone and then contour shades. The reason I chose to do that is because the highlight is quite a predominant part of this look. You don't have to do that. You could just go in and start painting in your highlighted areas if that's your preference. It was just logical for me to start with the lightest shade and then work up to the darker shades because they all sit on top. The darker shades are what we're going to be applying last. Another tip when using cream-based products is to use a synthetic brush. You'll notice the difference straight away if you're using a brush with natural hair because the cream product will just clump in the hair. It will look like a mess, it won't spread onto the skin very nice, and it will be really difficult to remove. The brush I'm using is by Blank Canvas Cosmetics and it's their concealer brush and it's perfect for this. I'm now going in with the second darkest skin tone shade. And this colour sits predominantly on the outer perimeter of the face, for instance where the contours of your face naturally curve, where there's less highlight on that area and it's slightly darker. So it will still look like a skin tone shade, it's just that it hasn't got that bright highlight on it. It can feel a little bit overwhelming when you're first doing this kind of look because you are just painting patterns and you can't really see the bigger picture until you take a step back or go away from what you're working on and come back to it, and then you can see it all coming together. It's a bit like doing a painting or a piece of art. But I promise you, if you continue to carry on painting the exact shapes where you see them on your reference image, or if you're following along with the tutorial, I promise you it will come together in the end. Next I'm taking the lightest of the 2 darkest shades, and we're going to use this to start creating some depth to the look. I'm still using the same concealer brush to apply this, I haven't changed brushes yet. In terms of tools, this looks quite minimal, we only use a handful of brushes. I'm using the very tip of the brush to draw the straight lines, and then I'm using the belly of the brush to pull the colour out and fill in that negative space. Remember, we're going to be applying a wig, which is an accessory to this costume, so it's a good idea to maybe try that on during the process of this makeup to see whereabouts it sits so you know how high to take your makeup. The pattern around this eye requires a smaller brush with a flat head that allows you to be more precise. whereas this eye requires a rounded tip, so I'm going to go back to my concealer brush for this section. However, if you don't have a flat liner brush, I'm sure you can still recreate the look with the end of your concealer brush. It's just having alternative brush heads can be more convenient. When you're creating a comic book style image, whether it's a painting, drawing or makeup, you always need to consider where your highlight is coming from and where your shadows are going to occur. On my reference image, the shadows are on the left side of the face and the highlight is more visible on the right. So I'm using this darker contour shade to create shadows on the left side of Jack's face. So for example, we will only be applying this colour to one side of Jack's nose and around the nostril area, not both, because the light will be coming from the right and the shadows will be occurring on the left. Try to include everything that you see on your reference image. For instance, when I was applying this little shadow to the lip, I kept thinking it just looks like a mole, but I knew that it was a necessary shadow, and once the look was complete, it no longer looked like a mole to me, it looked like a shadow. So just persist and keep on at it. Around the sides of the face, we're keeping it quite dark because this is the area that's mostly in the shade, and it's also to emphasise that the face has curvature and is three-dimensional. So don't be shy about going quite dark around the perimeter of the face. It will help to emphasise the highlighted sections through the centre of the face, and again, once you complete the look, it will all come together. For the lips, I'm going in with lightest flesh tones and I'm completely blanking those out. This is going to allow me to reshape Jack's lips to resemble those in the reference image. Another great thing about working with the cream products is if you make any mistakes like I did with the chin, it took me a couple of goes to try and get it to make it look as though Jack's chin was bigger, but I was able to use my foundation brush to wipe away the lines and then just retrace on that pattern. Here I decided to go in with a slightly lighter flesh tone, and I'm dabbing that between the highlight shade in the centre and that pinky flesh tone that we first applied. Using my concealer brush, I'm now deepening the eye sockets, and then I'm moving on to the neck to follow the same pattern that I see on the reference image. Now moving on to the darkest of the two contour shades, and I'm using this to add depth to the contour colours that we've already applied. So this is going to go on the very outer edges, creating a bit more of a shadow and more depth. I'm using a small flat brush to do this. It's squared off at the top, much like the one we used around the eye socket, only a bit smaller, and this is going to allow me to be a bit more precise and create very crisp lines. Going back to what I mentioned earlier about the shadows mostly being on the left side of the face, this will be where the majority of this particular colour is going to be placed. This dark colour allows us to reshape and really sink areas. Using the tip of the brush, I'm lining underneath the left side of the lip, which emphasises its shape. I'm also rounding off the top of the chin, directly underneath that lower lip. Then I'm lining the bottom half of the top lip, which makes that top lip look slightly smaller, but that's only temporary until we get the highlight on the very top lip. And as you can see, it looks so much more comic-like now we've done this. So cleaning off that brush and going in with the white Supracolor, we're going to highlight the opposite side of that bottom lip. So I'm lining the outer rim of the bottom lip and then pulling that colour across towards the centre. I'm also highlighting the Cupid's bow and pulling that white upwards onto the philtrum, and that's going to create that really sharp, intense highlight to the face. I'm doing the same to the tip of the nose on that right side of the face, and this is emphasising that we've got highlight on one side and shadow on the other. Then I'm taking some underneath that right eye next to that dark contour colour. To make sure the other side of the face doesn't look too flat, we're taking a small amount of that highlight underneath the left eye. One of the last steps in this look is to add the black. This is what's really going to make the look come together and give it that comic book effect. This is what makes your character look drawn. So as I do each step, I'm constantly looking at my reference image to see how each shape should look. I'm using a small paintbrush to fill in the brows. It allows me to do that nice flick at the front and define the tail. This really doesn't need to be too neat, it can be nice and thick. The idea is when Jack looks up, it's completely dark along his top lash line. Christopher Reeve had quite hooded eyes, so by darkening along that lash line, when Jack opens his eyes, you'll get that kind of flattened hexagon shape that's slightly rounded off on the outer corner. I've drawn a straight line coming down from Jack's brow all the way down to his nostril, again only on the left side, and I'm now filling in around the nose to emphasise that dark shadow. I'm lining along the bottom half of the top lip and adding a slight curve on that left side, and also underneath that bottom lip, again just to emphasise that shadow. Using a small brush, I'm dragging the black paint along the nose down into that brown cream, and that's just to create a gradient between the two shadow colours. Now it's time for the wig, which just slips on over your own hair, and I'm going to start creating the sideburns so that they blend down from the wig onto Jack's face. I'm also lining along the perimeter of the jaw up to where the earlobe is. And then going back to my small flat brush that I used earlier, I'm lining around the perimeter of Jack's ears. I'm using my paintbrush to emphasise the little V shape of the chin. I then paint out the entire underneath of the chin and also emphasise that shadow underneath the neck, fading it into that brown shade. I will however come back to the chin and lighten underneath the V, as that will make it look fuller as a chin. Concentrating on the left side of the face, I'm emphasising these dark shadows with a bit of the black paint on my small flat brush. And now I'm just going in and tweaking the eyes just to make them look more like Christopher Reeve's eyes as Superman. So I'm fading some of that black through the socket of the eye. On the right side of the face, I'm adding in a few flicks and a few lines using the black. This one around the nose I'm going to blend into the brown just to emphasise the shadow. The other ones I'm going to leave as defined lines, and again this is to make it look more comic-like. Going back to the chin, I'm lightening underneath that V shape using a little bit of the flesh tone, and it just helps to make the chin look fuller. Then you want to press some translucent powder into the face to set everything. Going in with this blue Supracolor, I'm going to use this to paint over the wig to create that distinctive Superman blue glow to his black hair. You can apply the majority of this coming from the parting, but also around the curl at the front and just around the edges of the sideburns. The wig is like a rubbery plastic, and I think if you tried to put paint on it, it would just bead up, whereas Supracolor is great for going over the rubbery plastic textures. These glasses came with a costume and they are perfect for this look. As soon as these went on, I got really excited. Jack then popped in some blue contact lenses, and off camera I finished off the neck, and that completed my comic book Clark Kent Superman Halloween look. I'd like to thank Warner Brothers and Party City for asking me to be involved, because I absolutely loved creating this look. If you enjoyed the tutorial as much as I did creating it for you, then please give it a thumbs up. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already done so, and if you missed my previous tutorial, it's on screen now. And if you'd like to follow me outside of YouTube, my social handles are on screen. Thanks for watching!